Welcome, everybody. My name is Randy Gragg. I'm the Executive Director of the Yeon Center for Architecture and the Landscape. Longtime journalist in town. Thanks for coming. This is just an amazing turnout. Great to see you all. No landscape feature in the metro region is as grand and more hidden than Willamette Falls. Second only to Niagara Falls for the volume of water spilling over it. It's been sacred to Native Americans for millennia and a powerhouse for the economy for a century and a half and blocked from public access for decades. Tonight we're going to meet the designers who are tasked with changing our relationship to the Willamette Falls for generations to come. As a region, we have a history with these kinds of projects. I'm sure I'm on the right slide here. In the 70s, a ragtag group of civic activists spurred a governor and a state highway chief to tear up a riverside highway for a waterfront park. In the 90s, a visionary mayor defied skeptics to add an esplanade on the other side. And for the 2010s, we have an equally powerful opportunity to reconnect our region to the river. Let me tell you a little bit about the Yeon Center before we get started and why we're behind this. I want the center and Metro and Clackamas County and Oregon City and our generous venue, Portland Art Museum, all welcome you, are all co-sponsors of this event. And hopefully it'll be the first of a series of talks as the design develops for Willamette Falls. The Yeon Center's namesake, Yeon, was an unparalleled designer and conservationist. The Yeon Center is a steward of two of his designs. The Watzik House, our only National Historic Landmark house, and the Shire, a 75-acre preserve in the Columbia Gorge. But the center is more than historic properties. We want to inspire rigorous thinking and public dialogue about architecture, urban design, and the landscape. This last year, we brought together 12 graduate students to study the Blue Heron Mill and to create designs for some of the buildings there and urban designs for the waterfront. The model in the back, if you haven't seen it, take a look, that's their work. And there's also a book of their designs for a small contribution to the Yeon Center that you can get back at the table. But Yeon's own work provides a kind of inspiration for tonight. In 1931, he single-handedly saved one of the most beloved viewsheds of the Oregon coast. In 1937, he wrote the first environmental impact study for how to preserve the scenic resources of the Columbia Gorge. And with the Shire, he bought a mile of the Columbia River's north shore directly across from Multnomah Falls and sculpted it into basically a park in the tradition of the great picturesque landscapes of England. And behind the scenes, he nudged the design of Waterfront Park from being kind of a shoehorn and a collection of horseshoe and barbecue pits into a unified gesture against the ever-changing skyline. Tonight, we bring this generation's visionary designers to the table to show us their stuff, Snoetta, Mayor Reed, and Dialogue. But before we meet them, I want to introduce Tony Conkle, City Manager Pro Tem for the town directly adjacent to the falls, Willamette, Oregon City. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge and thank several former and current representatives that are present here tonight. Former mayors, Mayor Neely from Oregon City and Alice Norris. Former Congresswoman Darlene Hooley. At least I got it out of the way early. Oregon City Commissioner Carol Pauley. Bobby Lee from the Governor's Regional Solutions Center. Commissioner Jim Bernard from Clackamas County. Lisa Nato, former state legislator. Lovey Pitt, Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs. David Hatch, Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians. Jody Carson, former Westland City Councilor. Metro Councilor Carlotta Collette. Oregon City Commissioner Rocky Smith. Gabrielle Goldfarb, Policy Advisor, Natural Resources for the Governor. Nina DiCancini, Northwest Regional Administrator for Oregon's Department of Environmental Quality. and representative for the property, Ms. Betsy Heidgerken. So we really do thank everyone for coming out tonight to join us. It is such a pleasure to see so many people here tonight, excited about the future of Oregon City and Willamette Falls. I'd like to thank Randy for inviting us to this Bright Lights event tonight.
Hold your microphone a little closer.
There is something amazing about these falls. Most Oregonians have never been there. Many didn't even know that it exists. And yet they are drawn to them and excited by the possibility they present. The possibility of self-discovery and regeneration draw us up the Willamette River into the falls, like salmon to the place where we respond. This was the gathering place of powerful Native American tribes and confederations for millennia, where they came to trade, harvest, and celebrate the spirit of the place. This was the end of the Oregon Trail. This is where the industrialization of the West started. This was the site for the first long-distance power transmission in the world. It provided power to the Portland metro region for homes and businesses, streetcars, and nightlights. When the Blue Heron Paper Company closed in February of 2011, it was a huge loss for our community. We lost 175 family wage jobs, and we lost a big part of our history when that site was shut down. When I talk about this property with people, it's amazing the stories that I hear about friends and families who worked on that property, put children through college, bought homes. It's intertwined in who we are in Oregon City and Clackamas County and throughout the region. It's such an amazing and important place. But instead of mourning what we lost, many of us came together, and with the support of our public partners, I truly do want to thank, on behalf of Oregon City, Metro, Clackamas County, and the state of Oregon. For together, we created a new vision for this property, a new opportunity, providing public access to the falls and down the historic Main Street of Oregon City to the public for the first time in over 100 years. Some may be shocked that at the beginning, people thought we were a little crazy. Heard that more than once or twice. But we've made incredible progress over the last 4.5 years. A shared vision document based on the values was created that united us and guided us in our decision-making process. We adopted a master plan for the property through a public hearing process with the cooperation and support from the property owner. We were able to obtain agreements from the owner as well as Portland General Electric, another partner who's been instrumental in this, for public access along the river and out to the falls. The Oregon State Legislature, they've shown their support by committing $12.5 million to this project. Metro has contributed $5 million in bond money to make sure that we can build and construct this private access along the river and protect the amazing ecosystems and habitats that are along the falls, around the falls. We also selected a world-class design firm to help shape the vision and realize it. And tonight, we're here to meet that amazing design firm and see their presentation. But just as important as that presentation is for them and for us to hear from you of what is important about this place. The main reason we've had the amazing success we've had over the last 4.5 years is because we've had the support of people in this room and throughout the community who have just taken and support and care for the Willamette Falls and the opportunity that it presents to us. Our success in creating an Oregon landmark requires us to make sure we incorporate in the design those things that are important to you. All those who have lived there, worked there, played there, kayaked there, fished there, or just sat up on the McLaughlin Promenade and looked over it dreaming about what could be. Those are all things that we need to hear. And fortunately for you, you get to begin that process tonight. On your chairs, when you sat down, you'll notice there were 2 sheets of paper. One is a 3x5 index card. If there are questions that you have for the design team, please fill them out. We have volunteers and staff who will be able to collect those, and we'll be able to utilize some of those during the question and answer section later in the program. You also have a larger sheet of paper, and on one side is information about Rediscover the Falls, the newly forming nonprofit for this project, and ways that you can be involved with that nonprofit in this project. On the other side, there's nothing. We really do hope that you take the time to fill in what excites you. What is your vision for the site? What are your aspirations? What are your dreams? What are your concerns? These are all things that we need to hear in order for this process and this project to be realized and be successful. We need your engagement well beyond tonight. We need to make sure that we take your comments and your desires and your dreams and that they are incorporated and that helps us to realize this project. You'll have an opportunity for additional information. Councilor Collette from Metro will be presenting later tonight with ways for you to become and stay involved in this process. And we really do hope that you take that up. I really would do, once again, thank you for coming out tonight, helping us celebrate this kickoff and beginning the process to rediscovering the falls.
Thanks, Tony. Nice job. I'm just curious, how many people in the audience are from Oregon City? All right. And from Clackamas County in general. Excellent. It's really great to have you here. Thanks for coming up. So let's get on and talk about some design. Okay. Come on up, you guys. Oh, yeah. So this is our team. On my immediate right, Michelle Delk from Snøhetta. As Director of Landscape Architecture for Oslo and New York-based Snøhetta, Michelle has led a wide array of projects, downtown plazas, conceptual plans for hundreds of acres of parks and streetscape revitalizations, and campus plazas and green spaces. And currently she is leading the design of the new Calgary Public Library Plaza and Gardens and the Temple Library landscape. To her right, Carol Mayer Reed. Brings more than 30 years of experience designing parks and waterfronts and plazas and streetscapes, recovered brownfield sites, stormwater infrastructure, and natural areas. With the slide I showed earlier of the East Bank Esplanade, Carol was the lead designer on that. Alan Boniface from Dialogue, all the way from Vancouver, BC. Is the principal at Dialogue. He's recognized as a leading thinker on urban issues. Alan's experience spans all kinds of project types, from single-family homes to large-scale urban environments in Vancouver, Edmonton, LA, Memphis. He's particularly well-versed. He's been on the Planning Commission for Vancouver. He's particularly well-versed in working with governments to shape private development. We've gotten to experience a little bit of his work here on the Ankeny Plaza and the connection of Saturday Market to the waterfront, and also in Astoria, the waterfront there. So welcome. And to his right is our project lead for Metro, Noah Siegel, who is among, he has actually quite a history with the city. Worked for two radically different administrations, Mayor Sam Adams and Mayor Charlie Hales, in international affairs, in policy, and he's also formerly a former foreign service officer. And Noah and I got to know each other on a trip to Israel that he orchestrated, brilliantly bringing all sides to the table. So he's very, very good at what he does. So welcome. You guys want to take over? I'll give you the...
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. So thank you all for coming. This is incredible, and we are thrilled to be here and to start this incredible journey with all of you, and we look forward to talking with you more tonight and in the future. Again, my name's Michelle Delk. I'm with Snøhetta. I'm here with Carol and Alan tonight, and I just want to mention briefly that we came together as three design firms to form what we refer to ourselves as the Design Collective. And to us, what that means is that we all bring maybe somewhat similar, but yet very distinct and different points of view and different experience and expertise to this project. And our intention is that this is a true collaboration, not only amongst the three of us who are here representing our firms tonight, but who also are here representing the larger team. And so just if everyone wouldn't mind, those of you who are part of our larger team, if you would wave or stand up and say hello to everyone. This is going to be an incredible process that it's going to take many to achieve the greatest possible outcome. So with that, tonight we're going to share a little bit about our individual firms, and then we want to tell you a little bit about our initial thinking for the Riverwalk. So I'm going to hand it over to Alan, and he's going to talk a little bit about dialogue.
Yes, I get the luxury or the choice here of being first, so thank you, everybody. And I think your words are absolutely correct, Michelle. We're here to start a collaboration with everybody in the room. And our firm in particular, you can see on this slide, is a firm that's founded on collaboration, and in particular, a focus on community building. So that's very much what we're about. And I picked this slide out because I thought, every time I visit the falls, I think, wow, this is a daunting site. But then I recall there's another site that we worked on that maybe puts this to shame. So just to remind everybody that things can happen that might shock you. So this is Granville Island today, for those of you that may not have been to Vancouver. This is a project that our firm's very proud of because we were the originating architects of this. We've worked on it since its inception some 40 years ago. And it continues to be a place that grows and grows in the love of the city. And in fact, it's the second most visited place in Canada now, with over 11 million visitors coming to the site, but still very much a part of the fabric of the city. And part of that fabric is actually thinking about placemaking in a very different way. Our firm really thinks about things in a way that I think a lot of firms don't, and certainly my colleagues do, that's for sure. But we fought, for instance, for this piece of Granville Island, which is the cement batching plant, to stay in the heart of Vancouver. It does a lot of things very well. It creates blue-collar jobs on site that are downtown. It's very sustainable. It's supplying concrete to buildings that are being built all around it, and it animates the waterfront. And frankly, they've become one of the most interesting tenants, as you can see right here. We do a lot of work around North America with similar types of projects. So the Falls project is one that we are really looking forward to. This is in Memphis. For those of you that maybe don't know Memphis, Memphis is a very depressed part of the country. And when we started this project, there was 20% unemployment in this particular neighborhood, a very blighted neighborhood. Our firm looks at things beyond the building itself. We are looking at, in this case, at a 1.5 million square foot old Sears warehouse building, a historically listed building. But we looked at more than just the building. We looked at very much how the building could transform the neighborhood and how that old infrastructure could become a community and a neighborhood. So this is a rendering of what's about to happen. And in fact, it is happening. We're a year into construction. This shows an aerial view of the construction underway. You can see some of the roofscape. It is the most amazing mixed-use project I've ever worked on. The top 3 floors are residential. There are offices. There is a high school in this building. There is industry. There's also a lot of retail, including a food store that will be using food that's grown around the site. So here's a shot of some of the planning work we're doing around the site and what it might look like in a few years when we finally get everything activated, as well as the very unique use of the industrial landscape and how that will connect to the outdoors. We also, you might know this fellow's brother very, very well. This is the kind of entrepreneurs that have been participating in the site. It's a great story about how a place can rejuvenate and find people that want to come and play. So this fellow is actually creating one of his 20-mile restaurants in the Crosstown project. We are also a firm that's rooted in placemaking where we are. And in my case, that's Vancouver, British Columbia. And that's a very unique place, but it's also part of the Pacific Northwest. And certainly when I work in Oregon and Washington, I share a sort of cultural connection. This is a project we're doing at the University of British Columbia, which is very much Pacific Northwest architecture and connecting to landscape. Another building we did in Vancouver, Richmond City Hall, that is very much a modern building, but also Pacific Northwest in its style. And some other projects that we've worked on. This is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation where we took an old, essentially industrial site and connected it back to the street. And you can see there a little coffee shop that we put in there that's part of that connectivity. We've also done sites outside of cities that are connected to landscape because we believe very much in an architecture and placemaking of a place. And this is a desert center in the Okanagan Valley. We also do a lot of urban planning, and if you go to our website, you can probably see a lot more than I'm showing you now, but this is downtown Vancouver. We did the planning for the Olympic Village, and one of the public spaces we did there was really about the history of the place. So these shapes come from the shipbuilding that used to happen on the site, and it's become a very successful part of the public realm. Thank you.
Okay, well, of the three of us, I'm the local here. Our offices at Mayor Reed are located downtown Portland, and this is a view from our office window. We like to think that the water that flows over the falls also goes by our office at some point, so if you want to send some paper boats down to us, we'll check them out on the way down. We are a multidisciplinary firm. We do landscape architecture, urban design, we do visual communications, and product design. So all of our firms are used to working not only externally with others, but internally within our own firms. And so it's I think it's a strength that we all bring. Mayor Reed's work, you probably know, you may not know we did it, but I'll tell you just a couple of things, and I'll show you three former brownfield waterfront sites that we're working on or have recently worked on. But Director Park, actually we worked on the outside of this building. We've done a lot up at Portland State, and we've done a lot of projects in South Waterfront, most recently completing the new CLSB project for OHSU. We're opening a new Daimler campus on Swan Island. We have a lot of projects regionally, and I like to think that since most of our work is based in the Pacific Northwest, that we're really focused on the attributes and the qualities that bring the quality of life here to this place. So I'll just start with the East Bank Esplanade, and thank you, Randy. Randy and I had some disagreements about that project in the very beginning, but I think I've won you over. Is that fair to say? Okay. I've been waiting 10 years to say that. Anyway, it has been wildly successful, and we were thrilled to be a part of it. It opened in 2001, and we thought it was a really difficult site, and it was. And it was on the water. In some cases, there's no land to put a trail on, so it was an infrastructure project. The point of it is to create connectivity in the city and to join two sides of the river around downtown, making sort of Portland's waterfront like a lake. You can go all kinds of ways in circles around it. And it's not only a place that people pass through, but they also spend time there. And we really enjoy seeing people use it. This was opening day of that project in 2001, and we showed people places and views of the city that they'd never seen before. So that was particularly exciting. And I think this project has some of those same potentials. In fact, I'm sure it does. So the East Bank also incorporated some of the industrial artifacts that were already there, a seawall, a concrete slurry that was left over from the Morrison Bridge. And then there were some places where we just simply said a trail is a good thing to do, and we had about 30 feet to put it in. So it was a little bit narrow in places. And also we felt that the habitat and fisheries and adding green to that bank, and looking out at it from my window, I can see it's substantially more green than it was 15 years ago. So I'm happy about that. And it seems that there's more biota, more wildlife, and hopefully it's benefiting fisheries as well. And then it's also a project that has placemaking qualities to it. It has maps, it has information pylons. We had a great deal of fun on the art program, and we really feel like people have embraced it in a way that we were hoping, yet we worked for 6 years on it not knowing whether they would come if we built it. Right? So more recently, we've been working with OMSI on a new waterfront, And as you know, when our Orange Line opens on Saturday, there's going to be a lot more traffic around these trails and the esplanades, River Place, and all of the things that connect to that new bridge. So we're talking with OMSI about the potentials to reactivate their waterfront a little bit more and a little more engagement with the buildings and potentials for the new development there. And then we're working on the left-hand side of that side of that slide is what we call the East Bank Crescent, where we are looking at the potential for river access, water access, maybe a place to swim. We're going to just start getting into it and seeing what other kinds of things, including habitat, can be done there. And then this is one you might know. This is a different river, the Deschutes, over in Bend, Oregon, and worked on the old mill district. So again, another brownfield project. Some buildings were able to be repurposed for retail and mixed use. Les Schwab Amphitheater has, lots of concerts there. It's really, this place is at the heart of Bend's recreation district. They use their waterfront, they use their river, they use all kinds of trails that connect into this wonderful place. And it also has really nice restaurants and places to be. It has a lot of shopping and movies and art kinds of events and that sort of thing. So we're really excited to have been part of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle so she can tell you more about Snøhetta.
No, not my own. Okay, so Snøhetta is named after a mountain. We aren't named after a person. A lot of people ask us where our name comes from. And we chose to take a name after a mountain in Norway. The office was started in 1989 in Oslo by a group of architects and landscape architects. And they didn't want to name it after themselves because they wanted it to continue as a collaboration as it grew and as it has grown. We now have offices around the world, and we have either constructed or are in the process of designing projects in many, many places. And we're very excited to be working here on the West Coast in the US. We are a transdisciplinary firm, similar to how Alan and Carol have shared about dialogue and Mare Reed. Snøhetta is made up of architects, landscape architects, interior architects, and branding and graphics designers. And we work incredibly collaboratively amongst not only everyone within our office, but throughout the different offices within our firm, with other consultants. And we also really believe in the importance of working collaboratively with the client and with the community. And so we really hold that close to how we design. And this is an image of our New York office up until actually just very recently we've relocated. But we have spaces in our office that are very conducive to this. And this happens to be a meeting table, a lunch table, a presentation table. We use this for everything. I wanted to share a few projects with you tonight that I think actually have very relevant components to them to the Willamette Falls Riverwalk. And at first glance, you might not think that the National Opera in Norway would have a direct relationship. But I think, in fact, it really does. This is a project that really brought back public access to the waterfront. This is in downtown Oslo. The waterfront was very disconnected to the public. It was contaminated. And this project really created a new access and energized the public and became a new civic heart in the city. Also in Norway, we have built this small building called the Reindeer Pavilion. This is on a mountain. It in fact is on the mountain that you would, it is on the Snøhetta mountain. It's on the hike if you were to climb to Snøhetta. And it's a small pavilion structure that we refer to as a keyless structure, which means it's open at any time to anyone. And it basically is just a small building that has been placed within a larger landscape and to celebrate that existing landscape and to create a place where people can contemplate, rest, and congregate. And it, in fact, is even built on a remnant foundation from a pre-existing building. In Calgary, we are working together with Dialogue on this site. This is in downtown Calgary. It is Basically, to the right is the civic heart of the city, and to the left is an area that is currently under redevelopment called the East Village. And this is a branch of the light rail that you see right here, where it begins to slowly dive below grade. And the city decided that this would be a really perfect site to build a library. And so we came together and we said, absolutely, this is a perfect site to build a library. Where else would you put a library? And we developed this building, which we are currently finishing construction drawings for, and we'll start construction soon, that is not only a library and not only is an important part of the civic heart of the city, but it acts as a bridge. And the light rail does continue on the same path as on the previous slide, and it dives below grade, and the library itself becomes a bridge. And it reconnects the civic heart to this new neighborhood, this mixed-use community. And it's a public open space. And so you can kind of see here in the image that there's a passageway that the terraced landscape, the hillside, lifts you up, and you're able to walk 24 hours a day. It will be open, and it literally bridges the light rail. In France, we are coming close to completion of a museum, the Lascaux Cave Museum. And I think it was in the 1960s that they had discovered the caves, and they had opened it to the public, and there was an incredible visitorship, but they realized quickly that the caves were deteriorating because of all of the interest from the public to visit. And so they closed the caves, and this museum now is a way to bring that back to the community. There are exact reproductions of the cave paintings themselves as part of the museum, as well as educational and informational exhibits that are part of telling people about the history, this incredible history. And then the last project I wanted to share, I thought some of you may be familiar with. Snowhetta and Mayor Reed are currently collaborating on the James Beard Public Market here in Portland. And we love difficult sites, and I think you could say that this is a pretty difficult site. Similar to the Riverwalk, similar to the library in Calgary, maybe not the most expected place to build a public market, but we think that it's a great opportunity to create a new space, to reconnect to the waterfront and to the park, and create a new, exciting space for the city. So with that, I want to continue with Alan and Carol to talk about some of the ideas that we've brought forward so far for the Willamette Falls Riverwalk. We were one of 3 teams that were selected to give some thought to how we would consider the Riverwalk. And so we developed a series of boards, which you may have seen. They're here in the room and reflected here on the screen, that represent ideas. And so this is not a design. We're incredibly early in the process. But we began to think about how we would think about this. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Carol for a little bit, and she'll share the beginning of our process.
Right. Well, thank you. And did I hear you say we're very early in the process? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. So in order to win a project like this, our team kind of had to spend a lot of time thinking about it and delving into it as deeply as we could, learning everything we could about it, and talking to a lot of people that know far more about it than we do. And we're still learning. Even as of today, we spent a lot of time in one room hearing a lot of information, and thank you for that, Noah. But there's really 4 core values that are expressed throughout this project, and these were formed during the framework plan, the vision study that was done previous to this by Walker Macy and the city and the county and the project partners. And those 4 values are represented here, and this was part of our submission because we wanted to relate to those. We wanted to understand those. So one is public access, and I have to say it's not just physical access, but it's psychological access too, because this is a place that people normally haven't gone unless they were involved in working there. The next one down is economic development. Alan will talk a little bit more, some ideas he has about that. But the Riverwalk is truly a catalyst for the rest of the development, and our process will engage us closely with the private developer to see what the synergies might be and activate Main Street more, and see what other wonderful things can come from a project like this. Historic and cultural interpretation is really important, and I'm sure you can appreciate the layers of history that are there back from thousands of occupation by the Native American tribes, and also the fact that commerce was part of what they were doing there. So economic development and historic and cultural interpretation are linked very closely in this regard. And then the healthy habitat part of it is really important. And we just want to show that, we want it to be an educational place. We want to blow people's minds. And I have to say, every time I've been out and looked closely at the falls, it's blown my mind in some way. So we're anxious for all of you to have that same experience. And healthy habitat will manifest itself in benefits for salmon and lamprey migration, as well as the birds and the insects and the water quality. So as we were getting ready for our proposal and our interview, we said, oh my God, this thing has so many points of view. You can't just look at it through one lens. You've got to think about it in a lot of different ways. So we set about trying to discover some of what that is. And this is on site, and looking for the nuggets of historic things that were revealed from photographs, but that we were seeing pieces of it on site. We also talked to a lot of people in the community. We stopped by the Highway 99 overlook. We had lunch in Singer Hill Cafe. We had, occasion to talk to people up on the I-205 overlook, and we wanted to know what they thought. So those are, you don't have to read them now, but they really were coming out with all these different points of view. And if not just on-site, there's these off-site points of view as well. So, I ran across a little group of girls taking selfies up on the bluff and thought, here they are on a Sunday afternoon. They could be doing anything, but they chose to be here. And they were wanting to access the falls in the worst way. And so I had a great conversation with them. And then there's the internal things that can be explored to this project. Most of you probably haven't been to the falls, but I guess even fewer of you have been inside one of the foundations and looked up through the grating at the sky. I mean, you still hear the falls from inside this space, and it's an amazing thing. And then one more thing I'll just mention is the connectivity. So we want to be able to get people there in a lot of multimodal ways. So we want to look at trail connections off-site. We want to connect over to West Lynn. We want to go to the little burg of Willamette. We want to go to Kanemo. We want to go to all the wonderful parks and recreation and open spaces that this area has to offer. And I have to say, if Willamette Falls doesn't just blow your mind, everything else that it has to do with will also do that as well. Here's Alan.
Thanks, Carol. So when we think of economic development as a team, and certainly our firm as well, we think about things quite differently. And that is that it's actually a design problem. And so in our firm, we've come up with a theory based on a lot of our work, including Granville Island, that has sort of gone back in time and looked at why places are successful. And as designers of places, this is information that's very critical to design, frankly. And what we found is that great places actually are truly mixed. They have a lot of things going on to make them last through time, and Granville Island certainly does that. These 5 pieces are the ones that we found are critical. Now, people often ask us, where is residential? Well, residential is implicit in this. It means that people are living nearby, and hopefully a lot of people. But to make a place work, you need these pieces. This site at the Willamette Falls is fascinating. Today we found even more layers of that really led to more of the same thinking. And that is, if you look back in time, this was a complete place. It was a mixed-use village. And in fact, it had all of these pieces. And the great American towns that were first formed in the West were actually places that had all of these pieces. If you think of a great old West street, you can think of the boardwalk, you can think of the businesses at the grade, and you'd have a blacksmith and a baker, and you'd have retail, you'd have production, and you'd have people living above that. So we actually had it right once, and we had it perfectly right on this site. And it's fascinating as somebody who deals with many sites and how to actually find these pieces to know that it was a big part of the history of the site. So I think there's a lot of great things we can work on the site. And even more so is the collaboration that we noted at the beginning. No great place is made without the collaboration of everybody involved. So what we try to do is extract the DNA of a place, both the site itself, in this case Oregon City, and all of the surrounding areas. What are the pieces that make it tick? Who are the people that are the entrepreneurs? What are the innate businesses and activities that people really want to do? What drives the activities on the site? So once we do that homework, I think there's going to be a very rich and abundant bunch of information that we can use to inform the economic development by really taking the DNA of the place up through the site. So that's what we intend to do.
It's hard to decide what we should pass between each other.
Seamless.
Yeah. So we were asked to consider 3 basic questions, and the boards that are here tonight and the slides that I want to share with you are our thoughts on those questions. We were asked to consider what were we inspired by about the site, and we immediately said that we should really think about the site as a master section rather than a master plan. And what that means to us, we'll talk a little bit more about. But you can see it in this image. It's about the understanding that there are many, many layers and a lot of richness to the site. We also were asked to consider materiality, and that's a really interesting question to be asked so early on in a process. But it really got us thinking about what is material. And we think that there are physical elements, ephemeral qualities, and the rituals of the people who have been here and who will be here in the future. And that the spirit of the place, the third question was spirit of place. And we said, well, it simply is the falls. It's the presence of the falls, but it's not just the fact that it's a waterfall. It's its essence through time and how you relate to it and understand it. And so if you think about a section, this is a cross-section through a tree, showing the rings of a tree. And embedded in that is the history and the growth and the things that have influenced that. And we think that the site can be really understood and needs to be understood as a cross-section. There are many layers of history, geology, hydrology, the people that have been here before, and that is all revealed within this cross-section. And that's similar to thinking about our fingerprints. And the strata of the site, the site itself, has its own identity, much like we each have our unique identity in our fingerprints. We simply want to find that and reveal that and explore that. And so you can see here, this image was really a beginning thought to say, if we start to look at the site as a section, we begin to think about it as kind of an X-ray, something that reveals the many, many layers. And you start to understand that there are many levels with which we might occupy the site or engage the site, whether that's the water level, the level of the falls, the different habitat and activation, and all of the different components that there are remnants of today. And the experience of the Riverwalk itself, we began to think might be somewhat episodic. It might be that there are multiple experiences, multiple ways to engage the river and engage the falls, and that by very carefully considering protection and reuse of existing structures and existing features, and very strategically adding and subtracting elements, we could start to shape or imagine shaping experiences of how you engage with the river and with the falls. And that may mean that you don't always touch the river or always see the falls, but that the reflective nature of the light or an opening to the sky, all of these different qualities begin to build connections for people to the site. The idea of materiality, again, we think is not only about physical materiality, which here is really embedded in the layers of the site, from the natural materials like basalt and water and the plants and animals that have been here and who are here today, but also the industrial materials that have been brought here that have shaped the site. And all of these many layers are materials that we can begin to work with and imagine beginning to create a sense of the character and the quality of the Riverwalk. But also the ephemeral qualities of the site, the feel of the spray on your skin, the reflected light in the sounds, sometimes maybe not knowing where the waterfall is, but being able to hear it. Maybe you don't see it, but you hear it. All of these combined with the way that people engage with the place are opportunities to tell new stories and craft new experiences. And so there are, of course, many rituals, many activities that have taken place here. This is just the beginning of us trying to understand that, and we hope to learn more about that as we work with you and as we study more and learn more from everyone who has so much knowledge about this place. But the combination of these are really what we see as the material opportunity. And then, last but not least, the spirit of the place is found in the essence of the falls. And so we all want to have access to the falls, and we want to imagine how we can engage and experience the falls. And we just want to leave you with this image, which is to embrace the opportunity for awe and wonder that there are places here that you can experience something that maybe you've never seen before, don't expect. The feel of the water on your skin, the roaring sound of the falls, the wildlife that might come here. These are all really amazing potential that this place holds. And so with that, we want to thank you, and we'll turn it back to Randy.
Great, thanks. If we could switch over to the other slide deck, that would be great. So, Noah, I'm going to ask you a question because probably everybody's wondering about this, so we'll just get it out of the way. $17 million in hand, right? $17 million in hand. And I look at the East Bank Esplanade things. And that was $30 million in 2001. And in today's dollars, that would be $40 million. And a much simpler project in many ways. And so I'm wondering, what is the strategy here, and what do you think, how far is 17 million going to get us in this project? And Carol, feel free to chime in, if, because since you've actually worked in those constraints before.
Straight to the money question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to clarify that we don't have 17 or 18 million dollars in hand, which is an important detail. We are really grateful to Representative Brent Barton, Senator Devlin, and others, Representative Kennemore, who championed this twice over in the legislature, really unheard of. And so we have an additional, on top of the initial $5 million commitment that they made, an additional pledge of $7.5 million. But we need to achieve a significant match, I'll repeat that, a significant match for those funds over the next 2 years. So, in a sense, we're approaching $20 million in our fundraising, but really it's a down payment against a more significant fundraising exercise. So I just want to be clear about that. And I think you're right that, we did initial scoping of the, through the master plan of the costs, but it was very rough. You can come down on either side of the fence. I think for some people, the notion of investing, I think we estimated up to $40 million in the Riverwalk and the master planning process. It sounds, like a lot of money in relation to what's there in Oregon City, or what people think is a good amount to invest in a walk to the waterfall. On the other hand, when you bring people out there who really understand that what we're building is more than just a sidewalk out to the falls. It's an entirely new experience, a place to reconnect with the core of who we are and regenerate the entire region, that maybe it's not even close to enough, what we're estimating. So you can sort of be on one side or the other. I think what we're doing right now is engaging in a really intensive scoping process with our design team, as well as working with the property owner, co-investing, we hope, in a process of figuring out what's the scope of our project, what are the expectations we have, and most importantly, I think, how do we phase it so that it's not daunting and impossible. We say the first phase can be marked as such, and that we can build it out with realistic expectations, and that it'll build momentum to raise additional funds in the future.
Carol, any thoughts you would like to share?
I was trying to remember the number per square inch for the East Bank that you dreamed up.
It was linear inch. Linear.
Linear inch? What was that?
I don't remember what
I
it was.
never had a budget presented to me.
Well,
that
one
way
of the things with
before.
East Black Esplanade was everybody was talking about it was, a path to nowhere and all of that. There was all this heartburn over the steadily escalating budget on it. So I wrote a funny article, or made a funny quip in an article about how many dollars per linear inch it was.
Right. And actually, I think it was worth it. When you really see these projects, I can look out my office window and I can never not see someone there. And I mostly see groups of people moving through. And I think about all the value that these people are getting just with exercise, with the social qualities of it, with the connectivity of both sides of the river that didn't used to be there anymore. These are infrastructure projects that spawn so many other kinds of potentials. And so that's what I think is the real value, is not only what they do for that space and that outdoor recreation or whatever you want to say, or that cultural experience you might have, but what it does economically can be phenomenal. And I have to say, thank you. I really believe that. So, these private investments are really important, and, you can point to lots of examples in the Pearl District and South Waterfront, with the light rail that we've just getting ready to open. Those spur private development and, in turn, really contribute to the quality of life. So I think it's worth it.
Yeah. So there's quite a cast of characters involved in Tony alluded to many of them, but then there's also other kinds of characters like this, the lamprey. This is what they look like at their height. Salmon, of course. There's 5 tribes with a deep stake in this site. You've got John McLaughlin. We could pair him up with the lamprey. We've got pioneers, coming out on the Oregon Trail. This is the end of the Oregon Trail. We have industry. The first, transmission of electricity in the country actually happened here. I mean, it's sort of incredible. And so, which brings me, my question is really about interpretation. It's a kind of crowded field, and a lot of folks are going to want to feel that their stake is adequately, put in the ground or in this path that you're making. And so, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experiences in philosophy about integrating interpretation into such a project, and where you've seen it succeed and where you've seen it fail.
Okay, I think we'll all take that. Well, it's a great point, and I think that what first comes to mind when I think about this is that, right now we are just beginning this stage of trying to absorb all these different players and learn as much about the history and what's really important to the people here. And so I think as we have a chance to talk to more people and learn more, that will gel and we'll be able to sift through that. But I think, to me, what really becomes important is to go back to the 4 core values that Carol kind of talked through with us, and to try to get at the essence of what people really value here, and what can speak to more people rather than fewer. And so while we know that you can't ask one site, one place to do everything for everyone, and there will have to be decisions made, you can find ways to really create something that that is open-ended and is experiential and isn't about one quality. And so I think that's what, as we began to explore the ideas that we shared with the boards and earlier in the presentation, it's getting at kind of that emotional connection, I think. And so what are the things that are going to move us? And so, I don't know what what the final answer will be and what this place will look like, but I hope that it can really connect emotionally to people in many ways.
I think we don't, like Michelle's saying, we don't know the answers yet, and we have many more questions than answers. But I think there's one thing that we've all agreed on, and I think the project partners would agree as well, is this idea of authenticity and what's true about the site and what are the big themes that are going to come out. And I think what we're going to struggle with as a design team is distilling down to the essence of all of those themes. I mean, there's just a laundry list of things that have happened on this site, and we want to make sure that all of that gets represented in a meaningful way, yet it can't be a site that's so peppered with signs and plaques and, you could endlessly cover this place with all kinds of things that people maybe would or wouldn't be interested in reading. So I think we want to think about interpretation in different ways, and the experiential qualities that Michelle was talking about. When you're out there, they can't be appreciated until you experience that site. You can't see it in a photograph. You can only feel it when you're there, and the auditory experience is a big part of it too. And when you finally get out there and you get next to the falls, and we'll have to say, this is, truth in advertising, the lowest times of water coming over the falls may be some of the highest tourism times of the year, right? In August, we know what this summer has been like. And so, we need to tell a bigger story than just it's the second largest waterfall by volume, because you may not see it that way. You may see it with a rock outcropping, and it's beautiful as a rock outcropping with water traveling over it. So we want to be really careful about how we tell these stories and, what we distill. And right now we're working a very large cone of information, and we have to bring it down to something that's manageable. So we'll need a lot of help from all of you on that, actually. It's a good assignment for everyone to think about.
So for me, it's a fascinating thing. In my career, I've been faced with this exact moment many times now. And I sit in places like this and think, how the heck is this going to happen? There's so many stakeholders. There's so much complexity. And I have to say that one of the great things about my career is that there's been these great paths to finding answers. And it's been exactly because of what we've said. There's a collaboration, there is a emotional belief, frankly, in the people of a community to do something. And this place has such a great history, and the fact that so many people have turned out tonight, I'm pretty sure this is going to happen again. And there will be people that compromise, and there'll be decisions along the way, but at the end of the day, it's the community's passion that brings things to life, and it may sound simplistic, but that's the truth.
Those of you who have questions, since we weren't able to set up mics, if you can write them down and pass them to the outside, or I guess there's one person working on the inside. They're sort of waving around, and we'll get your questions up here as well. So floods, friend or foe? Because we got them. They happen here. The 100-year flood has happened several times in the last century. And I'm curious about the sort of resiliency of this. Basically, your territory is below the 100-year flood line, or at the 100-year flood line, but as we know, that can be exceeded. How is that going to figure into your planning on this?
Well, we were just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, this, as everyone knows, is becoming an aspect to projects and places all over the country, all over the world. So the engaging with the river and thinking about the flood and the effect of the flood is an absolute critical thought process as a part of as the design is developed. I guess I wouldn't say that it's a foe, because it's just part of life, and it's part of life that we need to continue to understand and embrace. And as you can see in this image that you have on the screen, it's also part of that awe and wonder that I was talking about. That this is something that we're drawn to. It's incredibly dangerous, and it can be devastating at times, but it also can be something that could be celebrated and acknowledged, and we could work with. And so, I don't know how we will do that yet. We will have times that the Riverwalk or parts of the site are underwater. I think it begins to spark our imagination to think about the fact that the changing water levels will actually change your experience and the opportunity when you are on the site. And we were talking earlier today that's not just when there's a 100-year flood, say, that can happen on a daily basis. So Catherine was telling us earlier about kayaking, and that it was really low water because it's been relatively dry, and it had rained the night before she went kayaking, and instead of being a very calm water, it was actually really active and much higher water level, and that's just one day to the other, let alone seasonal changes or these larger events. And so we have to find a way to embrace that and use that as a benefit to the experience.
Floating walkway. No,
Right.
I'm kidding. I wouldn't want to be on a floating walkway in that, or a paddle board. But I've been working on this river for over 30 years now, and I cross it twice a day, and I notice it, I look at it, I swim in it, I've boated in it, I really love this river, and it has multiple personalities. Some of them are scary at times, some of them damage property, and sometimes you'll see a houseboat floating by that's, that's part of the river experience. I don't think we know the answer to how we're going to build in this condition yet. We have far more information to get from Metro and from the consulting team to advise us on this, so I don't think it would be probably a good question for us to speculate on what that might be, but we're taking it seriously, trust me.
Okay, so question from the audience. How are you assuring that the tribal voices will be heard on the site?
So we haven't mentioned this earlier, but what the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, which is the broader effort on the part of the public partners, Metro, Oregon City, Clackamas County, and the state of Oregon, we've really come together to form this special entity which exists from inspiration, not really in any legal sense, out of a sense of potential for what this place could be. So we've come together to have a single voice about advancing this project and channeling all the energy that we see around it to positive outcomes. And around that table, we've also really had some thoughtful conversations about how to make sure that the external parties are engaged respectfully, with good process, but also on a personal level. So the role of tribal outreach is with state parks in our group, and they have there's been a formal process following protocols of reaching out to all the tribal councils, encouraging them to participate in the creation of this project, and also to attend all the great events like tonight, and we're very happy to have representatives of Grand Ronde and Sept here tonight. So that's been a big part of our intention around the project. There's so much to tell when we had the governor at the site just a few months ago and announced the winning team. I had a conversation with one of the members of the Warm Spring who said he hadn't been there in over 40 years since his father brought him to fish down at the base of the falls. It was his first time back, and I realized there's really, like all of us, we relate to this falls and these rivers on different levels. So it's very important to us to follow the protocols and to make sure that the 5 tribes that we see as having this direct connection to the falls and a long history there are engaged, and that we're we do it in a very formal and respectful way, but also that we connect with all of those personal stories as well and include those personal experiences in the site. So it's not just the tribal councils, it's every person who fished with his or her father out at the site or participated in the lamprey harvesting or navigating the Willamette from end to end by canoe. So we're really trying to bring both of those things in and, of course, incorporate that into the interpretation of the site itself.
What is this is a very simple and straightforward question. What is the biggest obstacle you foresee to a successful and exciting outcome?
Can I take that? Well, that question was asked in our interview, and I have to say my answer was, and I didn't even hesitate to say this, I said if people lose faith, if you lose faith, it won't happen. If you build faith and you build a community of people that really care about this, which I know you all do and will, and the word is going to spread even farther, that kind of human power to make something really good happen, I just don't. If you lose faith, that's an obstacle. Otherwise, it's going to be hard and it's going to be long, but it can be done. So that's the way we feel about it.
So there's a number of questions about the historic buildings on the site and whether or not they're going to be saved and exactly what the relationship of the right-of-way is. And it was a question I was interested in posing to you as well, although from maybe a slightly different angle. I'd like to, one, know the answer to that question. So is your main effort going to be to try to preserve most of those buildings that are falling within the right-of-way, or are some of them going to have to go away?
We don't know yet.
I can just sort of set the stage in terms of what we've done, and then I can hand it back to you to think about how you view the project. But the historic preservation was one of the 4 core values of the project itself, and those 4 core values really infuse all aspects of what we do. We've led with public access because we think that experiencing those falls is the most catalytic element in this whole project. The more people experience it, the more opportunity we'll have to move this forward. But all 4 of those values, including cultural and historical interpretation, just really are intrinsic to what we're doing. Part of the process that we went through over the last 4.5 years was creating the framework master plan that was adopted ultimately by the Oregon City Council, and that identified 5 structures, 4 buildings, and then the foundation of the woolen mill that had special designation as historical buildings and should be targeted for preservation and storytelling and reuse that would communicate what was on this site and what was so precious about the history of this site. That's not to say that those are the only buildings or elements of the site that will be preserved, but we wanted to establish that as the bare minimum of what would be considered in design going forward.
Yeah, just to add to that, we don't know exactly how or what yet, but one of the key ideas that the design team came together around was that idea of protecting and reusing existing structures and existing features that through methods of very careful addition and subtraction that we could begin to imagine how you would shape the Riverwalk. And what that means in the simplest terms is that none of us are interested in coming here and scraping this clean and applying some idea that we just kind of cook up and doesn't have any connection to what's there today. That being said, we also don't imagine that everybody is going to want to keep every single structure on the site either. And so there's a balance that we'll explore and that we think will really establish a very unique, very grounded, very special identity for the future. And it also connects back to your earlier question about all the sort of layers of stories and all the players. And while I think all of us are really excited and really value making sure that the history of this place is clear, whether it's the man-made history or the geologic history or any number of others. But the potential for new stories and new experiences to be written here is also exciting and really critical, I think, to the process.
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. The project itself doesn't deal with all the buildings, of course. We deal with the buildings that are in the right of way. But I think as an approach, the worst sites that I've ever worked on are ones that have been cleaned and scraped bare. I mean, there's a richness of history and stories on the site, but there's also an infrastructure that's valuable from a redevelopment potential. There's lots of load-bearing areas, for instance, that can take buildings or adapt structures that are there. So, you know, when everything is finally done or on its way to being done, evolving to be done, I think at the end of the day, you want to ensure that that's there. And equally powerful on the site is the natural history and the rock and things like that, which have oftentimes been covered or littered with debris. And so needs to be a careful balancing of taking away and adding to that we don't know the answer to yet, but I think that's the idea.
Are there sites in the world people could go home and Google that you think really epitomize what you would like to accomplish here? Because there's been a lot of industrial redevelopment, particularly in Europe, in the River Valley. Minneapolis has done an interesting job. But are there ones that you have in your research and preparation for this project that have particularly captured your imagination?
I'm not sure there's anything quite like this, to be honest. I mean, I've traveled a lot, and there's a lot of brownfield sites, and there's a lot of post-industrial complexes that sit empty and no one quite knows what to do with. But how many of them are sitting next to a waterfall like this? And sometimes we ask ourselves, is beauty truly in the eye of the beholder? So what someone might find beautiful about this site just in its rawness, just in the way it sits now, or just in its honesty, might be really off-putting to somebody else. And that's when I talk about the psychological barriers. Most of us aren't used to dealing with this. The first time I went out there, I was toured out to what they call the dance floor, which is an old foundation, and you can look out over the falls and you can literally feel the mist. That's the defining moment that a lot of us enjoy about this site. And then as we walked back across the dam and walked through the complex of building, I was practically in tears because I thought, oh my God, how can this project even be done? How can we, how will the money come? How will the people agree? How will all the how and whys started sinking in on me? And, even if you demolished it, where would all that stuff go? It's just a big order to fill. And so, to be honest, Randy, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. And there's pieces of things that could be done here and all the projects that you mentioned. But I think this one stands apart, and I have to say it's going to get a lot of attention because of that. And the environmental part of it, the restoration, the habitat, the natural values, that is so important on this site, and lesser so perhaps in some of those other projects, that I think this has got to deliver on all those levels. It's got to do it in a really, really honest and important way, and very effective. And that's why they call this a legacy project. We have to leave it in a different condition than it is now, highly considered. And if you're asking about the clarifier, everybody in the audience, help us with your ideas for the clarifier. We'll look at all of them. I mean, to take it out means that does it go in a landfill somewhere? To leave it there, what is it? But it definitely speaks to the past, even though it's not a historic preservation artifact.
There's another side that I want to add. I absolutely agree with everything Carol is saying, and I can't, sitting here right now, think of something to tell you to Google that would be exactly the right thing to think about. But there is another side of it, and it's something that we're really interested in, which is early access or interim access or temporary opportunities. And so while we need to think about the long-term vision and the long-term future, as Noah spoke about, we need to think about phasing. And so we're thinking on many, many different levels. And so there are a couple of projects that come to mind that are, to me, are fascinating, and because they have kind of a delicate touch on a site that allows you to engage with it or see it or experience it in a way that is different than before. And so a site that is nothing like this, Central Park in New York City, a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so, Christo and Jean-Claude did the Gates installation. And to me, that installation of placing something within a context created a completely different read, a completely different experience of that context. And so that comes to mind when you ask that question, oddly. And there's another project in Rotterdam that we've spoken a little bit about, and I just call it the Yellow Bridge, but it probably has a real name. Oh, that's not it. But it's a project that the community came around to together to crowdsource and build a walkway through the city to essentially provide access, public access to places that were really difficult to get to. And so there are probably any number of others, and we'll be researching and thinking and talking more about that, but food for thought.
Yeah.
The audience would have some for us, but just thinking out loud, I mean, first of all, there is no place like this. I mean, one of the reasons that I'm drawn to this site is I think the opportunities here are world-class to do something unique. But if I was trying to think of some things that might come together, I mean, even the High Line in New York, if you sort of think of a piece of that and its catalytic abilities, that's a piece. The Museum of Contemporary Art in Massachusetts, which is, I forget the town, I've been there, maybe somebody remembers.
Lowell.
Sorry?
Lowell.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's, parts of old factories that have been taken and reused in unique ways, parts of Granville Island. I think all of that thinking has to come here to contribute to something quite different.
Bringing up the High Line, so your team beat out two formidable teams. One who had done the master plan, Walker Macy, paired up with Tom Balsley from New York, and then also James Corner in field operations and the local firm at Place. Anything you're going to steal from their ideas?
We haven't seen their ideas.
You haven't. They're public.
Have we?
I haven't.
Okay, I got to do your homework. So there's a lot of questions about the buildings and about the privately owned area that's owned by Mega Rock, all of those buildings basically, and that's not really this team's scope. But I am, in terms of the relationship of the Riverwalk to that area, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit. I mean, one of the big problems of Oregon City in this development is it's so large, and really, rents in Oregon City are not high enough to build a lot of buildings or retrofit a lot of buildings, and they're many years from ever being high enough. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about possible strategies. I mean, especially Alan, you've had a lot of experience with economic development, and I wonder if you've faced any sort of similar situations where you had to essentially create a market.
Yeah, I think there's a number of ways to answer that, and none of them are concrete answers that are going to satisfy everybody here at the moment. But the first thing is, it's very difficult whether you're designing a single building or a park or a Riverwalk to do that in isolation. I think we very much have to stitch the ideas that we're coming up with into the upland site and make sure that it's thought of in a cohesive way. So I think no matter what, that's very important. But in terms of the economics, there's a number of things that I've witnessed that are helpful. One of them is something that Michelle just alluded to, the sort of interim ideas. How do you activate a site in the interim and bring value to it, for lack of a better word, bring a brand to it that identifies the place and begins to create energy on the site? And that doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It just needs to begin to drive traffic and ideas. and get people thinking about what can happen. Temporary markets, festivals, kayak races, whatever. I mean, we could sit here and brainstorm hundreds of ideas, but those things are important to do in the interim. And frankly, the best example that I've experienced, and I really hope everybody goes to visit the Sears Crosstown website in Memphis, is this group of people. I mean, their site looked like this. It was a huge factory in the middle of nowhere with nobody around it. And you can see now that it's under construction through the recession that started. And when you count historic tax credits and federal tax credits, they've raised $200 million in the South, in a place that couldn't imagine that. They're offering things like free clinic for walk-ins for healthcare, things like that. Now, these are extreme examples, but I can tell you this started with 5 people and a desire to change their place. So, from the small little bits of fabric that you can do initially, that we can all brainstorm and participate in, and people we know can go on site, to the bigger picture, it's what Carol said too. You frankly have to have a belief in what can happen, and lots of things can happen.
Randy, I think just specific to our efforts on the site, I think what Carol said was exactly right. That if you go by existing market rents and the way a developer might look at it, going for the next hot neighborhood, it would take a very long time to get to the point where this is considered a developable property. And I think what you have to look at are those catalytic investments in infrastructure, but that's really sort of a technical way of saying investment in what you believe the future will be for that place and what can deliver it. So some places in this region that's been rail, and in this case I think it's the river and the falls and the natural areas around it that can, and I think everybody feels this when they get down there, that Oregon City is a special place, that the existing Main Street is a wonderful spot, and everybody sort of says, what's that thing that's going to jump this to the next level? It's coming, we just don't know what it is. And we believe in this project with the public partners that it really is access to the falls that will create the value where there currently isn't any, or where there isn't enough to make it developable. And that's really the guiding principle that we're following. And we're fortunate that when you have a good project, everything sort of flows. And I think we're very fortunate with the relationship we developed with Falls Legacy LLC, the property owner, and the public partners in Oregon City and Clackamas County have gone in together to apply for a joint planning grant to create a shared vision of what the entire site would look like and how the Riverwalk would integrate into it and how that would translate into the development plan. So I think we're really fortunate to have a partner like that. And I think that addresses a lot of what Alan was saying about how do you do this Riverwalk with a mind for what you're looking to manifest on the site as a whole, and then beyond that, what you want to bring to Oregon City, West Linn, and the entire region.
Maybe I could just quickly add to that, and that is, you're absolutely right. I would never underestimate the value of the public realm. You think of private developments up and down the West Coast and in other places. The creation of great public space is an amazing asset that drives value for properties and brings people in development.
Okay, I'm going to do a brief plug for a couple more events that are coming up, but while I'm doing that, I want each of you to sort of think about, project 10 years ahead, and tell me an experience that you hope you'll be able to have on this Riverwalk. So let me get to my plug here. So our next event, the John Yeon Center's next event, is Climate Change in the Willamette Valley. We're bringing 4 of the top thinkers about the valley and about climate change together to talk about what should we worry about and what should we do. There's a lot of interesting change, some of it actually positive that will come with that, but also a lot of people. And these 4 folks have thought about it a lot. David Hulse, who is the co-author of the Oregon Atlas, Pam Weir, who's headed up Meyer Memorial Trust's Willamette Initiative, Mike Houck, the urban naturalist, who's had so much impact locally, and John Miller, a farmer and a developer. And then the following day, actually, we sort of, Yeon Center, we kind of think big and then go down, burrow down to the small, or maybe the not so small. Some of you probably have noticed some of the buildings going up at Burnside and Grand on the east side of the Burnside Bridge. We're going to bring the 4 designers who are behind those buildings together to have a little conversation at Jimmy Mac's Jazz Club. Particularly if there are drinks involved, it should be pretty lively. They don't agree about everything, so I hope you all can make that as part of Design Week Portland. So back to you guys. 10 years from now, what do you hope will be an experience that you can have?
Seeing no answers from my cohorts here. Mine's pretty simple. You know, the success of places that I've been involved in are very simple. So in 10 years, if I could walk onto the site on a rainy February day and see local people inhabiting the streets, buying things in shops, going to have a drink, actually a lively place much like it was, you know, almost 100 years ago, that's success in my mind. If other people come at some point, that's great, but it has to be working locally and functioning well.
I have to say, I've got one granddaughter and a grandson on the way, so selfishly speaking, I want to take my grandkids out there. And I think there's a lot of people in this room that would like to do the same thing. And I hope it doesn't take 10 years to do that. I hope we can do it sooner than that. But in terms of a build-out of the whole rest of the district, I think the flexibility of what those uses are will result in a really interesting mix. And I caught myself, I mentioned the Pearl District, and I know the Pearl District is not this place. And, you know, maybe some things happen in the Pearl District that were good, but I don't want anyone to think that our collective vision for that is to make another Pearl District, because it doesn't apply to a site like this. It's just not the same place. But I share with Alan, you know, I want it to be really popular at all times of the year, and I want it to be an authentic place, and I want the habitat to be healed, and I want the water quality to be better, and, you know, I mean, there's just so many agendas that we all want here, so, but my bottom line is I want to take my grandkids there.
I'd like to get on a boat from downtown Portland, ride down to the falls, get off at the dock, walk up to a beautiful community space, maybe in the clarifier, for the 10-year anniversary Bright Lights event, for how we got this done and what a success it was.
That's good.
Good answer.
Now I have to follow that. I want this to be a place that anyone who comes here can come here over and over again and have a different experience, and that sometimes that experience could be with a group of friends or family or for a large event. But I also want that experience to be really personal and have a connection emotionally to the place, and for that to be connected to the water without necessarily being just seeing the water or just touching the water. I think there's so much potential to have this very rich understanding of the presence of the falls and really connect to that.
Excellent. Well, to wind up our evening, I want to turn the mic over to Councillor Carlotta Collette, who's been a great political champion of this project.
Thank you. It is really daunting to look out and see all these faces. I've waited 4 years for this many people to hear this story. Can y'all see me? I can jump up here. And I would love nothing better than to pass the hat and ask you all for money, but my staff said you can't do that yet. People have been asking us from the very beginning how they can pitch in, what they can do, how they can help, because you've seen the vision, and the vision goes on, and these cards are pretty hard to miss. So I want you to write your vision on the back of this. What would you like to see on the site in 10 years? How would you use it? When I was asked that when we first started this process, there used to be an opera house down here. I don't know if you knew that, but there was an opera house. Bring back the Opera House. My vision in those early days was I want to see the Oregon Opera opening at this site, and the first city, not just in Oregon, but on the whole West Coast. So my vision's pretty big. We need your help. We need your help to lead tours. We need your help to be docents. We need your help to help us form a nonprofit that can actually deliver on the promise of these incredible architects and this amazing team, and more importantly, that breathtaking site. We want you to come down and see it. If you haven't toured the site yet, please go to rediscoverthefalls.com and sign up for a tour. If you're willing, we can teach you how to lead a tour. We need your help. On the other side of this form is an opportunity for you to sign up and help us form the champions for Rediscover the Falls. We have filed paperwork. We actually have a bank account, but we can't take money quite yet. But we will need your help. If you know anything about fundraising, if you know anything about forming nonprofits, if you could be a champion with us on this project, please join us. We need as many of you as we can get, and 10 people that each of you know in addition to start. Because as you heard, this is I like to call it an overwhelming opportunity, because we cannot pass this up. We can't wait another 150 years before we let the people of Oregon and the people of the United States and the people of the world get down and see this amazing place. It is breathtaking, and it's our responsibility. It's the people in this room, the people up here on the dais, the people that we work with, the people we play with, the people we live around. Those are the people who are going to make this happen. We can't pass this opportunity up. So please, fill out this, hand it in, join us for the rest of our engagements. We're going to be having more events at the site. If you've got ideas like, a portable art show, anything like that, please, we are open. We want to get this site active. We want to get people down there. We want to be partying at the falls as soon as possible. So thank you all for coming. Please join us. Thank you, guys. I'm just so excited. I couldn't be prouder of this team. Thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody. If you're not on our mailing list, put your name down at the table back there. And hope to see you in a few months back to actually see some designs. Yeah. Okay, thanks so much. Take care.